My husband and I have a 3-year-old son together, and there has never been any doubt that my husband is the father. Last week, he came to me and said for the last few months he had been plagued with this anxiety that our son is not his. They don't look identical, but they definitely share similar features, and I see my husband whenever I look at my son. I was obviously blindsided by this and asked him to explain why he thought that he wasn't the father, and he couldn't really provide an answer other than a gut feeling. He asked me for a paternity test, and I said hell no. He said he could just do it without my permission, and I told him if he did that, I would never forgive him. My husband does not have a history of anxiety, but he did lose his job back at the start of the pandemic. I thought he was just stressed out, and I told him if he went to therapy and maybe started taking some anti-anxiety meds that I would consider getting the paternity test. He got upset and said that once he got the results of the test back, he wouldn't be anxious anymore. He again threatened to just get the test without my permission, and I told him that this would end our relationship. My friends and family are divided over this. Some think I should just take the test, and others are saying he's being insane and that if I cave to this, there's just going to be something else. I think there's something more serious going on here, and I need some neutral perspective. So what would you guys do?
This is why you should never try to investigate when you hear strange noises. Once there was a boy named Tom who was walking to school when he saw a photo lying on the grass outside. He picked it up and saw it was of one of the most beautiful girls he'd ever seen. She was wearing a dress, red shoes, and had her hands formed into a peace sign with 2 fingers up. When he got to school, he showed the picture to his friends in hopes that they would know who she was, but no one knew. That night, he woke up to strange tapping noises on his window. It sounded like someone had crawled up to his window and was tapping on it with their nails. He saw a faint shadow, but ignored it and tried to go back to sleep. The next night, he heard the tapping noise again. This time, he got up and tried to go outside to investigate, but right as he ran out, he was hit by a car. The driver came out of the car and tried to help him, but it was too late. He then found the picture next to his body. He saw a girl holding up 3 fingers.
Am I wrong for wanting to have my wedding even though my sister lost her baby? A week before my wedding, my sister found out she miscarried at 5 months. Obviously, I was very upset for her as losing a baby can be very tough, especially because it was her first baby. But I didn't want it to end up being more important than my wedding. 3 days before my wedding, my sister announces at a family gathering that she wants my wedding to be canceled and changed to a funeral for her baby. I was so upset that she would even ask this. I had been waiting months for my wedding, and her miscarriage happened so soon. She burst into tears in front of our family, saying I could wait a few months for my wedding, but she couldn't delay her baby's funeral. I got so mad I stormed off. My whole family took her side, telling me to cancel my wedding, even though I had arranged and bought everything. Even my dress and venue was ready, so I couldn't just cancel. I ended up cutting off all of my family, and only a few remained to attend my wedding. My sister hasn't spoken to me in years, and neither has my family. In my opinion, if my sister loses a baby, like a week before my wedding, I wouldn't have it. That's just me.
Storytime from Anonymous. One day I was walking home from Starbucks. It was a hot, sunny summer day, and the weather was about 105. I was wearing a big t-shirt, and I was sweating a lot. I checked my phone to see the time, and I noticed that my phone was dead. I shrugged it off and kept walking. Mind you, I was pretty far away from my house. Suddenly, I started to feel super dizzy and sick. The road in front of me started to turn blurry. My head was throbbing and it wouldn't stop. I felt like I was gonna die. I panicked and started to cry. Since my phone was dead, I couldn't call anybody. I walked a little further and knocked on a random stranger's door. No one answered. I sit down and I'm still super dizzy. I decided to try to walk home. The walk to my house was about 30 minutes. As I walk down the street, I wave at cars trying to get their attention. No one notices me. Suddenly, my eyesight gets super blurry. I start to lose my vision. I see a woman running up to me. I try to call out to her, but all I can hear is a ringing in my ears. Then everything goes black. Like part 2.
This is why you should never talk to strangers in an elevator. One day, a surgeon was working the night shift at a hospital. He just finished this operation on a patient and was going to the basement. He entered the elevator and there was one other woman already inside. They were casually chatting when the elevator door opened and another woman was about to enter. But the surgeon looked horrified. He quickly slammed the close button and punched the highest floor of the building. Surprised, the woman asked why he was being so rude and wouldn't let the other woman in the elevator with them. The surgeon explained that in this hospital, all patients wear white wristbands with their names printed on them, but the red wristbands are placed on all of the corpses. The surgeon then looks to the woman in the elevator with him and says, "That was the same woman I just operated on. She died on the operating table. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" The woman in the elevator with him just smiled, raised her arm, and said, "You mean like this one?"
Part 2 of why you should think twice about letting kids stay home alone. Now, our kitchen was an extension to the original house and had a flat roof that's competitively low compared to the rest of the house, with easy access to the bathroom window. After my little brother Sonny yelled out, he had the biggest, proudest smile I'd ever seen on his face. I don't think I'll ever forget the way Sonny's face dropped when he looked above my head. I looked up and saw a man sitting on the roof, staring down at me. He panicked and tried to kick me, then ran off into the neighbor's garden. I was terrified and Sonny was bawling his eyes out. I ushered him inside as quickly as possible and grabbed a knife from the kitchen. We went into his room and I tried to get him to sleep as I waited for our parents to get back. It was an agonizingly long 4 hours before they did. My stepdad immediately went outside to check to see if everything was alright. I heard them talking about how something had smashed the fuse box. We obviously called the police, but they didn't come until later the next day. They did an immediate search and found a makeshift bed in a nearby disused barn along with pictures of silhouettes of us in the shower through the frosted glass. The whole experience shook us up and we moved as soon as we could. However, because of this I always shut the curtains whenever I can and I see shadows underneath every door I see. My boyfriend and I have been dating for over 3 years. His birthday was coming up and I wanted it to be special. I decided to pick out a day where I went to the mall and got things that I thought he'd like and put it all together as a big present. While I was there, I ran into a friend of his named Matt. I told Matt what I was planning and since he was his close friend, I asked him if he'd be willing to help me pick out some things. Matt of course agreed, so we hit up some shops to find things that we both thought my boyfriend would really like. My boyfriend and I had recently moved in together and I knew that he was working, but his job's hours are always changing, so I didn't know when he'd get home. I didn't want him to catch me red-handed with all of the things before I hid them, so I asked him what he was doing and when he'd be home. That's when he told me that he was already off work and hanging out with Matt at the bars. This immediately stopped me in my tracks because there was no way he'd be hanging out with him since Matt was just a few feet away from me in the store. When I told Matt, he was confused too because he was never asked by my boyfriend to hang out at the bar. We have a very trusting relationship, so normally I'd believe him, but in this case I knew that it was a lie. I wasn't sure what to do because he's never lied to me before, or at least I've never caught him in a lie like this. That's when I decided to go home and wait for him.
My fiancé and I are high school sweethearts and we've been together for about 12 years. We were engaged for around 3 when he passed away due to an accident in the beginning of 2020. A few weeks ago, his brother came to visit me and he's planning to propose to his girlfriend. He asked me if he could have the family's engagement ring. The ring my fiancé gave me is a family ring which had been in the family for generations. I have been wearing this ring for almost 3 years and it's a symbol of our relationship. I don't feel ready to give it up. When I told him this, he got upset and said it's a family ring and it belongs to him now that his brother is dead. I told him to get out. I called his mom to let her know why I wanted to keep the ring. She told me she wouldn't have minded if I had been married to him, but I wasn't, so I'm not part of the family and therefore I should return the ring. She said I'll move on one day and it's unfair to hold on to a ring that I will never wear again, especially a ring that belongs to our family for generations. I would have at least considered giving back the ring in a few years. I just can't bear the thought of parting with this ring now. So I told her I'm sorry that she felt that way, but her son gave me this ring and I'm not giving it back. Since then, his mom and his brother have been spamming my phone with messages and calls about how I'm trying to steal their family ring. So am I wrong for wanting to keep the ring?
This is why you should think twice about letting kids stay home alone. I lived in a small village where everyone knows everyone and I could count the amount of houses on 2 hands. Nothing ever happened there, proper out in the stick stuff. One night, a few years ago, my mom and stepdad had gone out for this concert. They left me in charge of my little brother and dog. I was around 14 years old and I felt really proud that my parents trusted me enough to do that. I thought I was a cool sibling and an even cooler babysitter by staying up late, eating pizza, etc. Around 10:30 p.m. the power cut out. I didn't think anything of it because the weather hadn't been great lately and I figured that had something to do with it. I got some candles out of the cupboard and lit them, then put on some of our favorite songs. As soon as I sat back down, my little brother Sonny turned to me being the weird little kid that he was and told me in the calmest way possible that there was someone outside. I was a little unsettled by this, but our dog hadn't done anything, so I assumed it was just the neighbors. Sonny just shrugged and went back to his drawings. It was about 45 minutes after the power went out and I knew my dog needed to go out to do business. I told Sonny to grab him a biscuit while I let him out. When I opened the door, Sonny pushed past me and said, "I know you're out there and I'm calling the police." That's when I hear rustling from just above the doorway. When I looked up, I was terrified to see a man staring at me.
About a year into my relationship with my ex-fiance, he said that it was one of his coworkers' birthdays and asked if I wanted to go out to celebrate with everyone. I told him yes, and then he asked me if we could pick her up because she didn't have a ride to the nightclub, and I told him of course. We went to her house, went inside, had a drink with her, got in the car, drove to the nightclub, and met about 20 to 25 of their coworkers there. Throughout the night, he kept asking me to dance with her, and I thought it was weird because I didn't know her at all. Eventually, I decided I'd dance with her since it was her birthday and she seemed like she wanted to have fun. We went out on the dance floor and started dancing, and at one point I looked back and I noticed that all of the coworkers were laughing with my ex. I thought maybe he told a joke and didn't really think anything of it. In the end, I found out that that was the girl he was cheating on me with, and they weren't laughing because someone told a joke. They were laughing because I was the joke. Not only was he cheating on me, but everyone knew about it, and they decided that it was the perfect time to humiliate me unknowingly.
Someone who runs a cake business out of my house, I've had many different clients over the years that order cakes for many different reasons, and I have to say, I love most of them, okay? Most of them are complete angels, and they're the best. But there are a few things that people do when they're ordering cakes that is really annoying to me and other cake decorators, so I just want to warn you guys so that you don't ever do it too if you're ordering a cake. First, not showing up in time is super annoying. Like, I've had people that say they're gonna pick up their cake at 1 p.m. and then they show up at like 9 p.m. and I've just been like, girl, when are you gonna come get your cake? And I've had to sit around all day waiting for them to come pick it up. That's super annoying. But what's even worse is when people come to pick it up early, because us cake decorators are busy and sometimes we don't have your cake finished until like the hour before you pick it up. So definitely don't come early either. Also, if you don't like my prices, like, that's fine. I'm not offended. I can recommend somewhere else for you to go get a cake from, but I do try to make my prices as reasonable as possible. So it is really frustrating when people try to bargain with me and make it way cheaper, because I mean, this is how I make a living. So it's annoying, but anyway, that was my rant over.
Part 2 about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my dad parked in the middle of an intersection and people were calling the cops. So when the police arrived, my dad was half passed out in the car. This happened in like the middle of broad day, like there's traffic everywhere. So when they finally get up to the car, my dad is literally slumped in the driver's seat. There was a bottle of whiskey in the door and it was completely empty. When they went to arrest him, he started resisting. He was screaming a bunch of profanities at them and started kicking them, threatening them with guns, which made the situation worse because my dad had no clue that there were any guns in the back of the car. So that just made the police think that they were his. So they take my dad to jail and he has like 7 charges against him. But we were happy because we knew where he was. Well, the worst part is, so the next day when I went to school, people were coming up to me asking if that was my dad on the news. Some people were even making fun of me because of what he did. And that's really fucking embarrassing for a 12-year-old. But it's okay, Dad, I still love you.
Story time. One day I was walking home from school. I had to stay after school a little longer because I had to do some extra work. So the crossing guards weren't there and everyone had left. I was the only person around. I was walking where my mom normally picks me up. And I noticed a random car had been following me. I didn't really think anything of it because I thought it was just a car going my same direction. Until it started going faster when I was going faster and slowed down when I slowed down. Then I started to get pretty freaked out. So I texted my mom, and she wasn't replying. Then about 10 minutes later, she texted me, "I've been looking for you for about 20 minutes. I called her and told her that I had to stay after school. And I also told her that I was pretty sure someone was following me. I heard her gasp. Then she said, "Where are you? I'm coming to get you right now." I was confused. She seemed really scared. I told her what street I was on, and about 5 minutes later, I saw her. Mind you, the car was parked now next to me. I was trying to walk away from it and kept inching away. Once I saw my mom's car, I quickly climbed inside. Then I asked her why she was so worried. She showed me the news on her phone, and it said that there's been someone out kidnapping people in my neighborhood. I was really scared, and we started to head home when the guy got out of his car with a gun and started banging on our window. I was so scared. Like for part 2.
My brother almost died at Dairy Queen. So it was about 8 or 9 years ago. My family was in the store and my parents were cleaning the ice cream machines. At the same time, my brother was at the front of the Dairy Queen and he was spinning around, being funny, trying to make himself dizzy. Then he ran to the back of the store where my family and I were, but since they were cleaning the machine, it was all exposed and he ended up slicing his whole head on a metal rod that was poking out. He didn't tell us and we didn't even notice until there was blood dripping down his face.
Storytime from Anonymous. One day my friends and I were walking to my mom's friend's house. It was a Friday, so we went to the high school game that night. The game had just ended and it was around 10:30 p.m. My mom had texted me to meet her at her friend's house, which was about a 5-minute walk away from the stadium. There were a lot of kids walking home from the game too, so my mom thought it would be safe because I was walking with 5 other people. And my neighborhood is pretty safe. There's never really any crime. We were all just walking and having fun when I started to notice that the area we were walking in didn't seem familiar. I looked around and all the houses looked different. I looked around my friends and they seemed kind of confused too. "Guys, where are we?" I asked. I started to think about it, and as I thought harder, it seemed odd because we had been walking for such a long time. I guess that we had just been so deep in conversation that we had walked past the house. Then I checked the time on my phone. It was almost 11. And we had been walking for 30 minutes. I called my mom and explained to her what happened. She told me to get to the house soon because she didn't want anything bad to happen to us. So my friends and I laughed it off and started to head home. About 5 minutes later, I started to have a weird feeling that someone was watching us. I told everyone to stop and looked around. Then I noticed a black car. It was driving slowly behind us. I started to freak out. "Okay, guys, I think this car's following us," I said. I started to walk forward, and a few seconds later, the car started to move forward. Guys, I think the only thing we can do is run. Like part 2.
My mother-in-law has hated me since day one because I grew up in a single-family household, and she told my husband that he deserved to be with someone who came from a two-parent household. For 4 years, I bit my tongue trying to get her to like me. When we got engaged, she tried to dictate my whole wedding, not offering to pay for anything. When I decided I didn't want kids at the wedding, she flipped and told me I was selfish, that the wedding isn't for me, that I'm tearing her family apart, and that I'm ruining her life. Day of the wedding, she causes a scene because my mom danced with me and my husband, stealing her spotlight. My husband and her get into a fight, he storms away, and then she pushes me. I push her off, and then she lunges at me, going for my throat. She's literally trying to choke me at my wedding. All because I try to grab my husband and say that this was not the time for a fight with his mom. She gets escorted out by security. Fast forward to now. She tries to communicate with my husband, and my husband ignores her. Now he wants her back in his life. I don't know what to do. This lady put her hands on me at our wedding. I tried explaining to my husband how much she's hurt me, and he says he understands, but that's his mom. I don't know if I should let my husband talk to her again because I don't want him to resent me, but she crossed so many boundaries and she doesn't see what she did wrong. And she refuses to apologize to me. My fiance's girl best friend has never liked me. We were all hanging out when Madison and Michael came out from a room with Madison crying. Michael looks at me and starts swearing and says I'm a raging bitch. Being hormonal and pregnant, I start crying and asking what's wrong. Proceeds to tell me about the text message I sent Madison. I told her I would not allow her near our child. I only sent this text message after the many racist texts she sent me about my child and I, me being biracial and all. Instead of hearing me out, Michael kicked me out of the house that we shared. On my way out, I felt a lower cramp in my abdomen, and I thought nothing of this because I was not due for another 3 weeks. When I flinched from the pain, Michael told me to stop faking. On my way to my mom's, I felt a gush of water and immediately turned the car around so that I would make it to the hospital. I tried calling Michael numerous times, but my call was quickly declined. I gave birth to our baby all by myself. I decided to do something and post all the hurtful messages Madison sent me on Facebook. Michael calls me and I inform him about my whereabouts and he shows up 42 minutes later. He has tried to apologize multiple times, but I don't think I can forgive him. I went through the pain of pushing out an 8-pound baby all by myself because he chose to listen to his best friend over his fiancé.
Okie dokie. So, bit of a backstory. Me and my best mate started a business together. We built a custom kitchen in her home that's separate from her own kitchen, and we make custom cakes from there every week. So last year during COVID, we thought, let's chuck some of the videos up on TikTok and see how they go. And well, they didn't do very well at all. So I guess I kind of sat down and had to think about how I could improve and maybe get a little bit more traction on here. And I came up with the voiceover idea. So all the videos that I used to do were just videos of cakes with music on them. And as soon as I added my voice onto the videos, they started to get seen, I guess. And yeah, the rest is history. All of the cakes that you see on my TikTok page are for paying customers. We are unfortunately not in a position where we can just make cakes for the sake of it. The one in this video was a graffiti brick wall skateboard theme for a 7-year-old. And no joke, this part of it, doing the TikTok videos, has become one of my favourite parts of the job. It's really fun.
Okie dokie, good afternoon from sunny Melbourne. Currently out and about with my dog Basil and thought I would upload another video. Me and Katie, who's my business partner, we were really excited about this cake because it's the first full-size wedding cake we've had in ages. If you're not aware, Melbourne was in lockdown, restrictions are now lifting, and basically events were non-existent for a long time, but now they're back. So not only is it amazing for a small business in the events industry like ours, but it's so awesome for all of the couples out there that can finally get married. We've had some couples postpone their wedding 5 times. And because we've been doing such little cakes lately, when I put this cake together and stood back, I was like, whoa, this cake is massive. Anyway, yay for weddings, and I think this cake is bloody gorgeous.
Storytime about one of the worst customers ever. I got a new job at a coffee shop downtown. It was my first day out of training and I would be taking orders and making drinks on my own. I was a little nervous, but excited and ready to be by myself. Everything was going great until this woman came in. She came up to the counter and immediately noticed that I was new there. She said, "I'm a regular and come in almost every day. Write my order down and save it so I don't have to explain it to you again next time." At first I thought she was joking, so I smiled and laughed, but then I quickly realized that she wasn't kidding. She proceeded to order a very complicated drink, which I didn't mind. I was up for the challenge. I made her drink and handed it to her with a smile. Without even trying it, she said the color was off and requested I remake it. When I turned around to try again, she said, "Don't mess it up this time. It's not rocket science." I remade the drink, and this time she picked it up and looked at it, didn't try it, and complained that I put too much caramel in it and asked if I was trying to make her fat. I remade the drink a third time, doing everything she requested. This time she actually tried the drink and immediately spit it back into the cup. She then told me that I'm horrible at my job, called me incompetent and lazy, and of course, asked to speak to my manager. It only got worse from here.
My husband and I have a 3-year-old son together, and there has never been any doubt that my husband is the father. Last week, he came to me and said for the last few months he had been plagued with this anxiety that our son is not his. They don't look identical, but they definitely share similar features, and I see my husband whenever I look at my son. I was obviously blindsided by this and asked him to explain why he thought that he wasn't the father, and he couldn't really provide an answer other than a gut feeling. He asked me for a paternity test, and I said hell no. He said he could just do it without my permission, and I told him if he did that, I would never forgive him. My husband does not have a history of anxiety, but he did lose his job back at the start of the pandemic. I thought he was just stressed out, and I told him if he went to therapy and maybe started taking some anti-anxiety meds that I would consider getting the paternity test. He got upset and said that once he got the results of the test back, he wouldn't be anxious anymore. He again threatened to just get the test without my permission, and I told him that this would end our relationship. My friends and family are divided over this. Some think I should just take the test, and others are saying he's being insane and that if I cave to this, there's just going to be something else. I think there's something more serious going on here, and I need some neutral perspective. So what would you guys do?
Started dating this guy last February, and for Easter he invited me to his family's house, and I really wanted to make a good impression. He was like, "Don't worry, they'll love you. The only thing is that my mom is obsessed with her dog, so make sure you're nice to him." I'm like, of course I'm gonna be nice to her dog. I love dogs. So we get to his house, and the first thing we see is this loud yapping chihuahua running towards us. It's like missing patches of hair and has this really bad underbite, but I was like, oh, what a cutie. Mom's like, isn't he so cute? That's Peter. Who names a dog Peter? So we go to the kitchen, and then all of a sudden Peter starts vigorously humping my leg. His little pink wiener comes out. The mom's like, oh, he does that. He keeps coming back and humping it. So I go to the bathroom, and in my purse I have this little lavender perfume oil that I rub all over my legs, hoping that Peter won't like the smell of lavender. I go back out, we sit down for dinner. Peter goes under the table and starts licking my legs for the entire dinner. So finally we go home, but then his mom calls the next day, and she's crying because she had to take Peter to the vet because he was throwing up all night. I felt so bad. That dog ingested way too much lavender oil, and it's definitely my fault, but I don't say anything. Peter ended up being fine. He fully recovered. I never went back to his house because I was avoiding Peter, tiny, horny chihuahua.
Storytime of how my best friend got so weirdly obsessed with me that she even plotted to kill my boyfriend. So at the time, me and this girl, let's just call her Olivia, had only been friends for about 2 years. I mean, we really did everything together. We were with each other 24/7, and I mean, we were pretty good friends. But the only thing about our friendship is she did not like when I had other friends. I mean, she didn't have any other friends herself, but literally she would joke around about strangling my other friends because she didn't like when I gave my attention to anyone else. But honestly, I just thought of it as a joke. And then I started dating this guy, let's just name him Jacob. He was probably the sweetest guy I had ever met, and he was a real simp for me. So we started dating, and about 4 or 5 months go by, and he started getting these texts from a random number. And it would always be cringy things like leave her or you die, get away from her, and like stupid cringy threats. Then one night, me and him were just hanging out. Then he gets a text with his exact address saying he had till tonight to leave me or he wouldn't see another day. Then we hear a knock at the door. I'm running out of time, like for part 2.
Story time about how my boyfriend gave me sleeping pills before his boys' night out. I had been dating my boyfriend for a year, and we always had a pretty trusting relationship. One weekend, he was going to have a boys' night out with his friends, and I was going to stay home. However, earlier in the day, we had gone into an argument about how he never checks his phone while he's out or replies to my text to check in. He said he shouldn't have to check in with me while he's out, and I disagreed because I just want to make sure that he's okay. Fast forward to later that night when he's getting ready, I told him that even though we're fighting, I still expect him to keep in touch with me. He agrees this time without putting up a fight and asks me if I want to have a drink with him before he goes. He makes us some cocktails, and we drink them together while we wait for his friends to come pick him up. When his friends get there, he kisses me goodbye and leaves. Not even half an hour later, I'm knocked out cold. I remember waking up once just for a second to use the bathroom, but then knocking out again. In the morning when I woke up, he was asleep next to me, and I was really confused as to why I slept so much when I wasn't even tired. When my boyfriend woke up, he mentioned how nice it was that I hadn't messaged him and how I must have slept through the night after those cocktails. This raised some red flags, and I quickly questioned him about what was in the cocktails. At first, he called me crazy and told me that he didn't do anything to them. However, after about 20 minutes of accusing him, he finally confessed.
My best friend is getting married. Neither of us have any sisters, so we're both the closest the other has to one. Her fiancé comes from an extremely mega Catholic family. She pulled me aside this past weekend and told me I wouldn't be able to go to the ceremony, which is in a traditional Catholic church. Her fiancé's parents, who are paying for almost all of the wedding, do not want anyone who is not baptized, no one with kids out of wedlock, and no unmarried couples who are living together. I have 2 children from 2 different people, and I didn't marry either of their fathers. She said a lot of people are being uninvited to the ceremony, but I'm still welcome to come to the reception. That's just their demands for footing the bill for everything. I was fucking pissed. I'm used to being judged for being a young, unmarried mom, but not by a person I trusted. I told her I won't be going to the wedding at all. Reception be damned. She started crying and said it wasn't her choice, but she couldn't change their minds. I told her she's a hypocrite because she's already slept with her fiancé, and if she really is choosing money for a single day over me and my kids who she claims she loves. She pretty much begged me to reconsider, but I told her I respected myself and my children too much for that. I know it was a hard choice for her to make, but I feel like shit being judged for my kids and my past choices. Am I the asshole for telling her I won't come to her wedding? My boyfriend of 4 years proposed to me. I was extremely shocked because our relationship has been rocky the past year. As surprising as it is, I still felt overwhelmed with joy and excitement. He seemed thrilled and even had tears in his eyes while asking. I felt so emotional. The person I had loved for 4 years had asked me to marry them. But the thought of the randomness of the proposal couldn't leave my head. I practically slept on separate couches for the past 3 months. It was unsettling and confused me. Fast forward to the day after Valentine's Day and my fiancé breaks down and tells me that he can't marry me. He said it wouldn't be right and he wouldn't be doing it for the right reasons. I was confused and lost, and all I could do was question him about why he proposed and make me so happy. Finally, he confessed to me that my parents offered him $100,000 if he would propose to me. My family is decently well off, and they promised him that after marriage he would be well taken care of and won't have any struggle. This was something that he said he couldn't turn down, but he felt wrong and sick about living a lie. I went to confront my parents and they claimed it was true, but they only did it for my happiness since it's something they knew I wanted so bad. Am I the asshole for not continuing a relationship with my parents?